Welcome to Equal Entertainment. I'm Tracy E. Gilchrist, Vice President and Executive Producer of Entertainment for The Advocate. The newest installment of the Dune film series picks up right where it left off. In Dune Part 2, Paul, played by Timothée Chalamet, seeks revenge against those who killed his family and in the process unites with Chani, a strong Fremen woman played by Zendaya, who guides Paul on his journey and becomes his love interest. Meanwhile, Oppenheimer's Florence Pugh steps in as Princess Irulan, whose narration starts the film. I sat down with Zendaya and Florence Pugh to talk about gender, power, and of course, Zendaya and Timothée Chalamet's on-screen chemistry. Congratulations on Dune Part 2, and I want to go to you first, Florence, and something that struck me with both of these films. The first film, we first hear Chani's voice, and it's through her vision, and then we first hear your character's voice, and I think that's really important that the stories are told through these women. Would you touch on that?
Yeah, we actually just briefly answered, not a similar question, but it got us thinking. I think what was really wonderful that it started that way is that it's coming from a perspective of someone that is very much in it and within the decision, but doesn't have a clue what's going on. She knows the facts, she knows the history, she knows what's happened, but there's this underlying, bubbling uncertainty that you feel in her that then obviously transpires and then the audience can relate with that. I think it starts with her instantly trying to find out what has gone on, which I think you'd assume coming from that family that everybody would know and that everybody is a part of this decision. And so seeing this person that is very much a part of what's happened, but without understanding the depth, the decisions, the weight of what's happened because of their name, makes you then sympathize and makes you feel empathy for this person that has no idea just how dark and menacing what has gone on.
Right, right. Thank you very much. And Zendaya, I just asked a question about gender, but also in the same film, I feel as though Chani and Paul are kind of genderless in the way they relate to each other. They're very balanced, and I wonder if you would talk about that parity between them.
Yeah, I think, you know, for them, I think, especially for her, and the world that she comes from, I think that there's quite literally a line where she says, you know, we are equal here, and we fight alongside each other, you know, and I think for her, it's also kind of saying like you have to earn your way into this, you know, and this is a family, and this is my home, and you have to earn my respect just like anybody else would. And so I think they do see each other. And she sees him for literally just him, because the prophecy means nothing to her. In fact, she hates it, right? And in many ways, it makes it more difficult for her to even open up to the idea of love towards him. And I think in many ways, for that love story to feel real and feel honest, we had to earn it, right? We had to earn it, not just as the characters, but I think as filmmakers, and you know, Denny had to figure out a way to earn it, and we as his actors had to figure out a way to earn it in these moments that we had, because again, it's earned.
Yeah, which is great, and such a great payoff because the fans want it so badly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And then Florence, I wonder, you know, the princess is very metered, but there's some kind of comments about her kind of cunning, and she proves she could be maybe more ruthless than anyone, really. And would you talk a little bit about what you see drives her?
Yes, she's very cunning. She's very calculated. What drives her, it's funny, she's spent obviously her entire life being trained to be this thing that she ends up finding out at the end. She is very skillful. She's clearly got a set of skills that is going to be as terrifying as all the other Bene Gesserits. And she's been trained to kind of do the very thing that she ends up doing, which is figuring out what's going on. So what drives her, I think trying to do right by her father. I think her father, there's a great dynamic between them where he's obviously creating this fantastic child, like this child that can maybe be as smart as him one day and can maybe be a leader like him one day. And what's happening is that's happening in real form. She's just keeping her cards very close to her chest. So I think what drives her is to maybe one day impress her father in the way that...
On his journey, Paul is faced with a difficult decision. I also sat down with Timothée and Austin Butler, who plays Paul's rival, to discuss Paul's growth, his relationship with Zendaya's Chani, and what drives Butler's Fayed Rautha. Timothée, I want to go to you first and ask you a little bit about Paul's growth, because he's come a long way since the beginning of the first film through a lot of loss and also, what's required of him. Would you talk about playing that real transformation from the first film to the end of this one?
Yeah, well, it's always, it's simply what the script requires. I found myself yearning on part one for, the parts of the story that were to come where Paul was a little more sure on his feet and had assumed his leadership position. That wasn't the nature of the first movie because it was half of the first book. And here it felt like there was an imperative responsibility to, at the beginning of the film, still be somewhat a fish out of water, and definitely subservient and sort of, if not obedient, then trying to simply be in the ways of the Fremen. But obviously there's that shift, without giving too much away, where duty calls, responsibility calls, and it's the one way out, not only for himself but for his chosen people that have adopted him, and responsibility obliges him to grow into the man, grow into the leader that he becomes, not necessarily because he wants to at first.
Right, right. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And then Austin, I think it's Florence's character who describes your character as a psychopath, but he's also, in his fight scenes, he's also kind of has decorum in discussing the honor of fighting well. And I wonder, would you talk just a little bit about what drives him?
Yeah, I remember reading that, where he says he fought well, and the sense of wanting a real challenge and wanting to have some sort of, because there is, while there are many things that he does that when you read it you go, wow, that's very morally corrupt, to say the least. And then there's other moments like that where you realize, there's some sense of honor or respect, and I think he's highly intelligent, and he just grew up in this brutality, and that makes you need to act in a certain way in order to survive and in order to get ahead and do what you think is best for yourself and for your family.
Yeah, like these cycles. Yeah. Thank you. And then Timothée, I was just speaking with Zendaya, and I was talking about how Paul and Chani are really so much equals in so many ways. There's a lot of parity. I kind of don't even see them as gendered, to be honest. And I wonder, Zendaya said that relationship had to be earned on screen, and also, of course, the fans are craving that. Would you talk about building that real kind of parity and trust that comes across on screen?
I think that dynamic is what we tinkered with the most, not just Zendaya and I, but I think with Denis as well. It's sort of the irony of a production of this size that's handled so deftly on a technical level, but that this, I don't want to say it was the trickiest, but it was almost the most important dynamic to find. Obviously, a story where sincere affection between two characters is felt was the preliminary goal, but beyond that, what Zendaya alluded to, nuances relationship of having to earn it, and not in a gendered way, as you put it, but just out of a place of respect, cultural respect. Those aren't themes you really see in films of this size, or actually even just in stories of romance. So I'm really proud of the way the dynamic evolves in the movie.
Thank you so much for watching. You can find more equal entertainment stories on the Advocate Channel app, available in the Apple and Google Play Store. For the Advocate Channel, I'm Tracy E. Gilchrist, and I will see you next time.